Hello everybody and welcome back to our Unreal Engine 4 and Playfab series. Just a quick note before we get into today's episode. Last episode we looked into the purchasing side of things, both with virtual currency and through Steam. Now I had a comment about the plugin that I used in the other game because you have to code C++ in order to get the microtransaction back from Steam. But not only that as well, it's something that when I was doing it in the first place a while back, there is nothing really out there to help you. There was a plugin a while ago called UWorks, but doesn't seem to exist anymore, and it looks like somebody else has released one, like a couple of them on the marketplace, but they're like, 50, 60 quid, and yes, it does come with all the stuff that you could need for callbacks within the game, but if you're just looking for this one thing, like, some people just want the simple microtransaction. So I've decided to make a plugin myself using the code that we wrote for my last project. I've got all the marketplace stuff set up with Unreal. I'm just working with them at the moment for a slight little issue with something small in the plugin, but hopefully that should be released later on in the week. I'll be making a video about it separately to talk over the code, show you a quick example in Engine, and how to set it up, and then hopefully, you guys can download it and hook it straight up into your game, and it should hopefully, the callback should work for the microtransactions, then, this stuff will successfully work. It's a bit of a pain to show you, like last episode, it working in my project that I've already got, but seeing as, it requires C++ code and there's nothing really out there for it, it's kind of a bummer. So I thought I'd quickly do that, and I thought I'd quickly make a mention of it here before we get into today's episode. So make sure you keep an eye out, and once it's out, it'll probably be about Wednesday or Thursday. I'll let you guys know, and there'll be a video to follow. So then, for today's episode, we're going to be looking into news, notifications, which is also emails, and the accounts. Now, just a quick overview. News is something that you can set up within Playfab to give the player information. Now, you can only have 10 of these active on Playfab at once, so you probably don't want to use them too often, or use them for special things like patch notes, like if it's a big patch, or I don't know, if you're giving the player information on events on a mobile game, use it for that sort of stuff. It does automatically have translation built into it, so you can set up the translations automatically for players who have set their in-game language through Playfab. So it can, or as long as you get it translated itself, you can automatically do it. Again, we'll look into this shortly. The next thing is notifications and emails. Now, this is more to do with mobile side of things. The emails you can use on PC, but it's more for hooking up accounts, which we'll go into in a sec. Whereas, obviously, push notifications is just mobile, basically. I don't think the Switch does notifications. They might do, but I don't think they do. You probably could also hook it up as well in, like, there might be an option for the Facebook notification system. I'm pretty sure there isn't. I'm pretty sure the notifications at the moment on Playfab are purely for iOS and Android. So we'll look into setting them up. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go into it because we're mainly focusing around Steam. However, I will show you how to get that sort of stuff set up and going. And then lastly, we're going to look into the accounts of the players. So what I mean by that is when you look at your players, when you go into their specific profile, the first page that it brings you up is account details. And all of these account details are unique to the player. So obviously they link the Steam account that's there. And any other accounts that are linked to it will show up. So we're going to be looking into how we can tell the player to set their own display name, which obviously you can then display in game. Their contact email for resetting passwords if you want to, like, because whenever you create this, it'll also ask for a password. You'll get your Playfab username and email along with the password. This is for multi-platform stuff. Obviously, we're not going to, I'm not going to sit here and create a game that goes onto a Steam, iOS, Android, Switch, Facebook to show you it working. That'll take me months. But we'll go over the basics of it and how you can call all this through the API. So basically, if you're looking for a multi-platform game that your players obviously, you want them to keep all the stuff that they've earned through the game. So say if they play the game for a while on Steam, and then you release the the iOS or the Android version of the game, and they want to continue playing it on mobile, you obviously they want to keep all of the stuff they've earned, especially things they've bought like items and gold or whatever. So the best way to do that is by linking the accounts. So you can simply link the account through iOS or Android to make sure that this player has the same account, basically, that have access to the same account. Now, the only other way to do this is that through the past examples that we've shown, it logs in via your Steam and it creates a new one if it exists. If you try to do the exact same way, the best way to do it basically is you create a new account for the player the first time they log in, because obviously it needs to connect to Playfab. Then once they have that, give an option somewhere in the game, probably in settings, to link the account. And then that's where their username and password and email will come in, because they'll put in that information. Playfab will find the account that's their main one, and it'll link them together. Obviously then you can then delete the other account that's no longer needed, but at least then the player has access to the account that they've been playing on Steam, and they're not losing anything. So again, we're going to go into that shortly, but right for now, we're just an overview of this episode is going to be news, notifications, and accounts. So let's begin. So then, we're going to start with news. Now, as I said before, news is a great way of giving information to the players that you want to give them, like big information on things like events or patch notes. Obviously with Steam, patch notes are kind of built into the Steam page through Steamworks, and you can kind of send through that. However, this is good if you want to have, if it's key to have some of the information in game. It's all good and stuff having, all the patch notes on Steam that tell people what's happened, but sometimes players don't want to go into Steam and look at what's changed. Sometimes they want it in the game itself. Say, for example, like Dota 2, anytime there's a big patch, the patch is actually in the game. Like, you can read everything that's happened without even leaving the game, which is what players pretty much want, especially whenever it comes to anything like balance. They want to know what's changed, they want to know what it is now, what it was, and they want to then go straight into the game. They don't want to have to open up Steam, go to the store page, look at the patch notes, try and find out what it is, because, the patch notes aren't great on Steam. But obviously, you can customize how you want to display them in the game. So that's probably the best thing to do. Obviously, if you want to use this system for like notifying players of events or anything like that, that's also pretty useful. But be careful, because because Playfab does have a 10 news limit. Like, it seems to be a hard limit that no matter what you pay for, like no matter what type of account you have on Playfab, it seems to be 10 as the max. Obviously, I haven't looked too much into the entrepreneur side of things because it gets pretty costly. But I'm pretty sure they might have the same as well. So what you want to kind of do is come up with a backup system. You want the players to be able to save locally, just to a save file through Unreal. Just save the news, save whatever this is, so that when you get over 10 and then you have to start deleting the oldest to create a new one, the older players that have been around for a lot longer will still have access to that news. Obviously, if you're talking about years and years of a game's news, it could get pretty big, but at least, like, players that have been around for a long time will be able to see the development of the game. So I'd recommend always doing that. But we're just going to add one in for now. Basically, like, it's basically going to be the first one the player will ever see when they first log in. Now, I would also recommend having one that is always there as a base, so that if anything goes wrong, or if anything, if the player joins for the first time, they've always got something there to show that the system is working. This is more for our benefit as well as the players, because at least then you can see that it's working as well. You can see all the example stuff. Obviously, don't just put test or example or whatever. Actually make it, welcome to the game sort of thing, or anything like that. So at least if they look at the page, something's gone wrong, but it's reading the very first one, great. At least they can see that it's, the game is working, kind of. Or, that there might be problems with the server, or at least you, as the developer, can actually understand that it's, it didn't read all the ones you wanted it to, but at least it's reading the first one, so, you're kind of almost there. Now, you can have a look at the quick start that they give you for the news. It basically just goes over the basics, as they always do. but we're just going to create our own just to give it to you. Now, in order to do anything that the player receives, like a notification or the news, you have to set your title's default language. Obviously, you know, most people are probably going to pick English. Again, that's down to you, what you want your default to be. But again, I'm just going to set mine to English. And then if we go back to title news, you can see now that if we click on here, it actually works. Now, they've recently updated and added a couple of new things into this. So you can actually set up the AM and PM side of things for the time. It does also give you the timestamp in UTC. The servers of Playfab work in UTC, so everything you ever do will be in UTC. So just keep that in mind when you're doing some of the things, but obviously, you know, it isn't really going to affect you too much. It might affect more like automatic things that we've talked about before when things happen at, say, like midnight. You know, it might happen at a random... It might not be midnight for you, but it'll be midnight for the Playfab servers. So, you have 3 different statuses of it. You have archived, which, you know, if you're not going to be publishing many, is probably the best thing to do. Published, which means the player can read it, it is live. And unpublished, which means that you've created it, however, the player can't see it. They, you know, when you do the API call through the engine to get the news, it doesn't grab it because it's not published. Obviously, English. Now, the reason we have to set a default language for this is because this first one sets it to be the game's default language. You know, it's kind of, you know, you guys should understand this. Your default language is English, therefore your first news segment, it should always be in English. You know, it's kind of a given. But, you know, I'm just saying out there just to make sure. Title and body. Now, the title is obviously the title of the news segment, and the body is all the text that goes in it. Now, the body is actually a JSON, which means that you can do a lot more with it. Say, if you want to make certain bits of the text bold or italic, you know, they change font, they are different colors. They, you know, you include an image in here for the background. Say if you've got something on in your game and this news segment needs to have a background, you can put the reference to obviously find within the engine. You can put it inside of here. You can put, you know, image inside of the brackets, comma, sorry, and then here just put image 3 or something like that, and then whenever this reads it from within the engine, you know, you can find whichever image is image 3 and display it. And, you know, that should make everything a lot easier. This allows you to do some pretty powerful stuff simply because it's not just text. You can put anything in here, and as long as you create the other side of it, the stuff in engine, in order to read it, you can do whatever you want with it. So this can become pretty powerful. And then right at the bottom here, we have add language. So if you do have translations done, say if you were translating it into, I don't know, say if you're translating it into German, you'd select German, and then you'd simply just put everything in exactly the same, but obviously with the correct translated text. Then because the player's automatically selected their language, or, you know, they should have selected it when they've set up their account, which is another thing that I'll show you shortly, when they're setting up their accounts to set their default language, which is something that you should probably do from very early on in your game. It will automatically give you just the correct one. Whenever you get news from the API, it won't read and display every single language option. It will look, do you have a language set? If no, just give you the default one, which is English. If yes, try and find the language in the list here. If it doesn't have it, it will default back to the default language of English. But say if you had your language actually set as German, it would ignore the English one and simply just give you the German one. So, you know, having all that stuff already there is pretty useful, because it will automatically update depending on the language of the player. And it's all through Playfab rather than through the engine. So once you've set one up, I'm just going to quickly remove this language one. I'm just going to simply put in here a welcome message for the player. I'm just going to, you know, put welcome to the game. like so. And then this is actually going to be welcome text. I'm just going to put welcome text like that. Obviously open it up as a JSON to make sure that it's, you know, it's valid as the JSON. So then within the engine now, we can simply get the news, look for welcome text within the body, and then just print the string that comes with it. So that's what we're going to do. Now, you can set it up here to, you know, come out at different dates. You basically want to try and set this to be exactly when you're going to publish it. So say if you were writing news now, you know, the timestamp is automatically done for when this news is created. So if you create it like a week in advance, it would actually have the timestamp and time of whenever you created it. It won't have whenever you set it to be published. So make sure that you set it to whenever you want it to go out. Obviously, you'll have to still come in here manually, unless you set up an automation, but I'm pretty sure you have to still do it manually by coming in here and changing it to published. But at least then your timestamp and your time will be correct, because that information is also passed into the engine, and you can print it out to show the player. So then all we have to do now is simply just save title news. And then you'll see here that we have the timestamp, which again is not really that relevant unless you want to display the timestamp. The status of the news segment being unpublished, and its title. Now, last updated is just when you last changed the news item, and the way that it gathers, or the way that it used to gather last time I used this, is that it gathers it in a list dependent on last updated. So, you know, you might want to use, if you're making things out of order and you're just creating things willy-nilly, I mean, sure, there's only 10, which kind of keeps it nice and engine, but maybe you want to sort it by the timestamp to make sure that, you know, everything is ordered correctly. Now, they might have changed this because it's been a while. They might have changed this so that, you know, it automatically does that on their end. But just double check whenever you're creating this inside the engine, and I'll show you that in a second. Whenever you're doing the call, just make sure by maybe printing the title just as a string, make sure that it's actually just printed them all out correctly. Okay, then let's open up the engine and let's have a look at how we're going to set this up inside of here. So again, we're just going to open up our Playfab graph instance and have a look in here. So let's create a custom event. Call this, I don't know, get game news, or I'll just quickly change that to news. And then from here, you're going to do get title news, and then again, you want the client one. Make the request. Now, the request is pretty simple. It's literally just count. Obviously, as we know, there is, defaults to 10, you know, and there's only 10 that you can have anyway. So this is more so if you specifically want to grab, say, an actual instance of the title news. I don't know why you'd want to do that. Most of the time, you're probably going to want to print it, but, you know, if you guys need it for a specific reason, it's there to just grab, say, the first one, if you only want to display the first one. Okay, so we're going to set up the success. So we're going to get game news success, and then off of here, custom event, get game news failed. Again, hook up our failure function straight to this so that we know if anything goes wrong. Off of the results of the success, we want to break it. Now in here we have an array of JSONs, which is the news basically. We're going to do a quick print string just to say that we've gathered it successfully. So news, I don't know, gathered success, something like that. Then you probably want to save your news, because each time that the player comes back to the main menu, you probably want to you'll probably want to call this, because, you know, something might have been released since then, or anytime the player comes back to the main menu of the game, anytime they're not in a multiplayer server, or, you know, they're not on whatever level they need to be, you probably want to make sure that, you know, something hasn't been released for the game. If there's any more news, if there's been a patch, anything like that, because obviously, you know, you don't want really well, unless it's designed, say like, you know, they're on a certain version. But if it's a game that automatically, well, that you update and publish, and you know they need to be playing on the most recent version of the game, anytime they come back to the main menu, you probably want to check that. So, you know, you want to call, first off, you want to call, like, you know, is the server version of the game the same as the version they're currently playing? You know, this can be simply done with a title data. Compare the title data to the in-game value of whatever it is in here. So say in the main menu UI, you have version 1.07. They're in a game, and whilst they're in a game, an update goes out, and it's, you know, you set the data inside of Playfab for Windows to version 1.08. They come back out, check it against it, it'll go, oh, there's been a new update. Tell the player that, make sure that they can't do anything, and make sure they grab the new update if it's something in that game that requires that type of thing. Now, obviously, you know, there's other things. If that's the same, then get the news. You know, there might have been some news that's gone out about like an event that's coming up in a couple of days' time. This is more mobile, so an event that's coming up in like on the weekend. You know, when they've come back from the game, you might have released a bit of news that says, you know, keep an eye out for Saturday because a big event's going to happen or something like that. You want to let the players know that. And if you don't, you know, some players might play your game for like literally hours and hours upon end, and you don't want to miss out on key information. So because of that, you probably want to save this so that every time it gets updated, we're just going to promote it here to a variable and call it news. But then also as well, you just want to clear the array before you set it, just to be on the safe side, as some of you are probably well aware. Sometimes arrays can be a little bit mischievous, is probably the best word. Now then, inside of wherever you're going to put all of your news, this obviously you'll pass through the array, and then from within the array, you can simply do, you know, I'll just do it all in here for now, but we'll do like a for each loop to go through each bit of the news. Then in here, these are exactly the same as others that we've done. So, you know, we have access to get field, and we can get the field of the title. Obviously, you know, this is something that you're probably just going to want to print out and put in anywhere. That, you know, this isn't going to change. The title isn't a JSON. The title is just a string. So, you know, just putting this on an empty UI just to show that it's there, at least then you know that this is working. And then from that, you can simply, you know, add in basically, in order to do this, it depends how you want to do it. If you just want to show one bit of the news, say the latest news, that's pretty simple to do. Just ignore the for each loop, you know, get the first one, or just call one instance of it, you know, just call one inside the count here, and just show it. If you want a system, say like Dota 2, where you can use a drop down and people can select past updates to display to the player, and you know, they'll select them in order to see what's going on or what has gone on, then you know, you kind of want a system where something is saved that says what was the last patch the player read, and create a notification system that says, you know, oh, if they haven't read the latest patch, show them a little icon that says, you know, oh, there's been a new patch, or open it up as soon as they come back to the main menu so they know that something's there. You know, and the title can sometimes be, especially if it's, you know, a unique title, if you're always going to try and keep it unique, then the title is a good way to do that. You know, you could just say, have they read this title, yes or no? But the best one probably to do it is probably off of, say, like the timestamp of the news. You know, you're probably going to want to keep that one as the specifics, simply because it's more exact to what we actually want rather than just the title. Then once you have the title, the next one that you need to do is get body. Now obviously, as we saw when we were creating it, the body is actually a JSON and not just a string. So using get field and then doing that as string will return, you know, just a massive long JSON string that you probably don't want. However, because it's a string, you could always use some sort of parse into an array, or, you know, some sort of split in order to split it down and use the specific JSON value keys that we've put in. So the welcome text that we put into our first one here, you know, yes, it will return this all as one giant string if there's loads of text in here. But at least then, if you pass it into an array, or if you split it, then you'll be able to read each one. You'll be able to read the welcome text and the welcome to game like the welcome to game text, and then you'll be able to do it that way. There's multiple ways that you can go about this. Basically, because it's a JSON object, you can split it down into the objects, or you could split it down into a string. Like, it will print it all as a string, and then separate the strings. It's down to you what you want to do on that, and then all you have to do is simply just, hook up exactly what you want into the engine, and then obviously, hook it up, put it wherever it needs to be. Wicked. And then obviously then it's down to you to decide how you want to design the specific news segment UI. Again, this is quite powerful because you can put in different JSONs in order to have things like different fonts, different images in the background, say. You could even include things like hyperlinks, like, if you want to start putting in things like a hyperlink into the news, and if they click on it, it opens up a separate either Steam web page, or it takes them directly to a browser. You could put that sort of thing in there. Say like a Discord link. You could put a Discord link in, saying, welcome to the game, join our Discord group, that sort of stuff. So if we now just create a simple call for this in our init functions up at the top here, just ignore some of this. So here I've hooked up get game news. Now, inside the count, I am just going to set this to 10. Sometimes it could always cause an issue with the fact that it's set to 0, and it might literally just grab nothing. And then I always put like a simple print inside of here to make sure that it's looping through the actual stuff. So now if we decide to run this, you'll see hopefully that it works. I have come into here and set the status to be published so that it does actually grab it. Otherwise, if you leave it as unpublished, it won't actually work. It'll think, it's invisible. And there we go. You can see here that it's news gathered successfully. It calls hello, which is just, again, the print string that I put in order to make sure it's looping through, so it actually found one. You can see here it's found the title of welcome text. Welcome. And then inside of here, you've got I've just simply done the whole JSON as a string, and it's just welcome text, welcome to the game. Now, you can just sort that out yourself. You can split the body into whatever you need it to be, and you can just set it up all in game. But you can see here that the client and the engine is already getting all the title news data that we've passed through, and as long as you set it to published, then it will actually read it. So that's the news segment. It's very simple, very easy, but pretty powerful. So on to the next thing that we're looking at in this episode, which is emails and push notifications. The email template, again, is very simple. There is just a simple tutorial that you can read through here. It's just like how to set up a simple email. Mainly, the only thing that the email address is used for is password reset, which is hooked up to the account. Now, you can send out custom emails, unless this is something your game needs. You probably aren't going to need this anyway. You'll probably just need it specifically for the password reset. But other than that, you could use it if you need to. So we're just going to open up a template here just to show you. You have the template name, you have the type. It automatically gives you a couple, so account recovery, email verification, and custom. Again, they're pretty, self-explanatory. Account recovery, the player wants to recover their account. Email verification, this is useful if you want to make sure that the player actually verifies that it's a proper email, not just a made-up one. Custom, you can do it for anything. From address and callback, from name, so you probably want to put in here, as you can see in this one, you probably want to put the name of the game in. Now, the email address is probably something that you need to sort out. So, like, if you need to be able to have an email address that'll actually send out emails, sort of thing, to be able to send it to the players automatically. You can see here they've just simply put support@playfab.com. It's a valid email address. It will do stuff that they need, but make sure it's yours. And the callback URL. Now, there is a couple of things here that'll give you, a little bit of help in doing that sort of stuff, but the callback URL, I'm not entirely sure what this is used for. Again, this is like almost a very specific use of of a feature within Playfab. It's not something that a lot of people actually use, mainly because a lot of games don't require either multi-platform, or they don't require the player to set up an account with them unless you're creating something massive. They're like, like Blizzard doing something like, I don't know, Hearthstone that you can play on mobile and PC. It's depending on the type of game you're making, it's pretty uncommon that you're going to have both, well, or multiple platforms where they actually combine together and the player can do it that way. And then obviously you got the same as you have in news. You've got the language defaulted to your game's default. The email subject, again, this is just a standard email subject like you would have in a normal email, and the email body, i.e. the text within the email. Again, you can set up multiple languages. It's the same as news, and simply put it all in there. I would recommend having either somebody who knows this sort of stuff, as in the HTML side of things. As you can see here from the example, you've got the head, body, all of this confirmation URL stuff here. This isn't something that I personally have done. I have never learnt HTML, so some of this to me, is a bit foreign in terms of understanding it. But the tutorial here that they have goes over pretty nicely exactly what it is that it does. There is a little bit of help on here online for this, but again, the email templates is a very specific thing. Most people nowadays with games, they don't want to be spamming people constantly with emails because it's going to put users off. And depending on the type of the game, some people find it weird that you would even get emails about the game, especially like mobile versions of the games. Most things that you want to convey to the player, you want to do it within the game itself, not through an email. Mainly because as well, there's just, a lot of people have emails nowadays that are either just throwaway emails or spam detectors, or they just contain so much rubbish that you just don't want to put anything into your email because it will just get lost with all the spam that people get nowadays. So unless this is actually something you need, it's not really as important as some of the other things that you can do. If you need it, I would say make sure to have someone who knows HTML help. Make sure that you've got an email address and some URLs in order to do stuff with it, and make sure that you look at some of the tutorials that they've actually put up for this, because they will help you. There's a few like localized email, setting up an SMTP server with add-ons, using a rule to verify a contact email, that sort of stuff. It's very specific, but it could be pretty powerful. But due to the fact that this is just a video that's showing you the basics of Playfab and hooking them into the engine, it's not something that we're going to go into. Again, I do believe that there are some calls within the engine you can do here. So you can probably do like email. Yeah, there we go. So you can, the client could do something that allows them to do the remove contact email or add or update contact email and send the account recovery email. Now, I believe that password and some of the others are specifically done through the cloud script side of things, simply because you don't want a client to be able to reset their password. You probably want to have it so that it does like it says in the tip there with a link followed to be able to change the password. Basically, you want it so that it requests it to Playfab sends an email to the correct email address, and then it goes from there. Everyone should know this. I bet you guys watching, you've had something come through before, or you've needed to change a password before. It hasn't let you do it there and then on the site, or on the game rather. It sends you an email, and then you click the link and you go through the process that way. So again, if you're going to do this, make sure that you have some protection in place. I would probably recommend putting in some sort of, if you're going to do this, have a verification like the tutorial showed. Have some sort of verification so that players need to verify their email accounts or something, or they get like a reward for verifying their email, so it entices them to do it. And just make sure that, you know, that if somebody does manage to get any, like they want to request the password change, they can't just do it through the game. They actually need to have access to the email address. You know, just a couple of safety things. Adding in this email and password can be pretty powerful for multi-platform stuff, but it can also lead to a lot of hacking things if you don't do it right, in the sense that people could then start hacking passwords and getting access to people's accounts. You know, this is something that you don't want, and if you're going to start setting this up or messing about with it, you know, make sure, you know, you make sure that there's all the security in place needed, because you really don't want to get this wrong. Now, we're going to leave the email templates for now, because it's something that I'm not going to set up personally, because I don't have, obviously I don't have a email address or a website in order to do all this sending to and fro. So we're going to go on to push notifications. Now, again, push notifications requires you to have the title language set up by default. There is yet again another tutorial showing you this, how to set up the basics of a push notification. Now, this is again specifically for basically mobile users. I don't think it actually allows you to do anything other than, yep, see here, advanced, so the Android payload and the iOS payload. Now, you might specifically be able to do this for something like Facebook. I'm not 100% sure. It's something that is great for mobile and that pretty simple to set up. However, it requires you to mostly have all the other stuff in place, as in you already need to have a Google or Apple ID, as in like an actual app ID similar to Steam's, so that you can call this sort of stuff. And it's set up in the very same way as the news is and the email. So these are just all templates, you know, template name, what's the name of it, the content, what language it's in, the subject and the message, all that sort of stuff. It's basically just exactly the same. All it's doing is getting the push notification data that it needs to send. Now, if you have a look inside of the add-ons and say go to Apple and have a look at this, you know, you're going to need to have all of this installed first. You're going to need to have the install Apple with the bundle ID that you get from Apple. You know, there'll probably be other things here. Yep, so like there's the bundle ID, there's the app shared secret key. You know, you need all of this set up already before you even think about doing the push notifications. And again, at the moment, as I'm sure most of you are aware, there is a bit of a thing going on between Apple and Epic. So, you know, for the meantime, or at least right now, as this this video's been recorded in September 2020, I'd probably recommend doing Android first, simply because we don't actually know right now what's going to be happening with Unreal and Apple. Things might change. You know, it might end up that Apple does ban Epic from being able to use the Unreal Engine to publish on their iOS. You know, it might not be a permanent thing, but at the moment, the future for it is a little bit unseen. So I'd recommend probably starting off with the Android one for now, and then moving on to the iOS one, simply because we don't actually know what's going to happen. Like, as in, don't spend all of your time trying to get all of this working on Apple, and then Apple turn around, say, next week or next month and say, yep, we're not allowing the Unreal Engine games to be on our store for the next, 6 months or something as punishment because of what's happening with Fortnite. You don't want that, because then you'll have wasted a load of time. You'll have paid for the Apple dev stuff that, won't even exist anymore for the next 6 months. You want to focus on the ones that we know are going to happen. So obviously I know that Fortnite's also in a bit of a issue with Android as well, but it doesn't seem to be more drastic issues, should I say, with Android at the moment. Obviously they're still having a little bit of talks with them because of what's happened. But obviously, again, they're not going to turn around. Like, at the moment, there's no sign of Android turning around and saying that, the Unreal Engine games are going to be removed from the store. So again, I'd probably start off with Android rather than Apple. Now, if you have decided to go down the route of the push notifications, as we discovered as we discussed in some of the automation and cloud script stuff, there is a lot of stuff you can do with published notifications and push notifications to the players. specifically to do with like rules or scheduled tasks. So you can actually set up a rule that I don't know, say player logged in here just as an example. Actions, you can actually send a push notification here, and the same in scheduled tasks. In a scheduled task just runs basically a couple of options or a cloud script, and because these are all cloud script anyway, you can send a push notification, or you can send an email as well. In order to have the email though, you have to set up the SMTP for the game. With push notifications, you just need to have the set up push notifications one. Now the push notifications, again, it brings you to this screen which is in the title settings, and the push notifications must be Android or iOS, and again you must have the API key in order to do this. Again, I don't have those because I'm just showing you how to do this in Unreal for Steam. But if this is the route you're going down, there's a lot of information, like clicking here, the push notification basics. They do go through some of the stuff on how to set it up, specifically for either Android or iOS. This is very useful, and I would certainly look into this if you're going to go down this route. But yeah, this is mobile specific. So the last thing that brings us to today is the accounts. So within each player, obviously, as we discussed earlier, each player has all of the account information that you can not tell them to set, but you can allow them to set it by going into, say, like a setting within your game and allowing them to set this sort of information. Some things are locked, like the player ID. You don't want players to be able to change this, but you probably want players when they either the first time they load up the game or whenever they decide to do this account setup, you probably want them to be able to set a contact email, which will also be the same as their login email. You want them to be able to set their own display name, so they can have different they can have a different name to Steam, because obviously a lot of people created their Steam IDs a long time ago, and some players don't like them. They probably want to have their own display name that they're more commonly referred to nowadays. But again, with this display name issue, there are issues with bad words coming in. Basically, if you're going to do this, put it in an area of the game where you're going to make sure that you do checks against bad words, basically. Then further on down here, again, this has got the username and the email. The difference here is that this is the title player account, so this is to do with the specific game. If you're creating multiple games on Playfab, then you want to probably change the master player account, but this master player account refers to the studio. So say something like Blizzard, you have the username and password in order to get onto Blizzard, but each game will have its own title account. So you can have different names within the different games, sort of things. Most of the time, you're probably just going to change the title account one. Probably ignore the master player account. However, this is where the email and password are set in order to link accounts. You can put in like an image URL here for players who want to be able to display an image as their profile picture, maybe. Again, be careful of this. You don't want anything bad getting on. It's kind of hard as well. Like at least with the display name, you can kind of create checks already in order to do this. But with the image URL, you kind of can't. There might be services out there or an add-on. I know there's an add-on for checking the display name, but I don't know if there's any for the URL, like for the image. To check if the image isn't actually bad. So be careful using this. And then the last thing at the bottom here is the identity. So this is basically linked accounts. So if we go in here, you can see that this one has just got the Android or the iOS. But there are other ones as well. You've got Facebook, you got the Switch, you've got obviously Steam, iOS, Android. Any sort of platform that you can probably imagine, which is within this add-ons here. So all of these, you can set up links to hook up to. I mean, Personally, I can't actually think of a game that's on every single one of these platforms. That's on Xbox, PlayStation, Facebook, Steam, Twitch, all of these. But if you wanted to, you could have them all hooked up to a player for some reason. But again, that's where then you once you start to hook up multiple platforms to the same user, that's where you want to do the creating username and email stuff. So the best way you can do this is just by going into the engine. Let's see, go to display name, probably is. Update user title display name. So you can just simply set this. Do the call as normal. So custom event. Set name, something like that. Make the request. This is going to just pass through the string of display name that you're calling. Add an event for custom. Set name failed. Look up the fail as always. Up here, custom event. Set name success. And then the results, I believe, yep, it just literally has the display name. It says here this will be the original display name if the rename attempt failed. So this is probably good in order to hook straight up into, when they set it, hook it up into their, I don't know, account so that it automatically updates the name to show that it's actually changed. Again, there's other ones as well. So there's like email. So add or update contact email. You want to set this up the same way. Again, you're passing through just a string here with the email address on it. There is the image. Let's see, image URL that you can change. This might be slightly different in order to actually get hold of. Some of the things are contained and allowed for you to be able to call individually, like the title name there that we saw. Other things might be specifically locked into an account, so like you might have to get the user's profile or get the user's account and then do that. I think it's called avatar. Yep. So update avatar URL, again, make the request. There's the image URL. Again, be careful with this, just because it's kind of harder to to keep track of images. You might end up with something really bad that you don't want in your game, especially if it's more like, if it's a smaller image and it's only ever shown for the player that's playing it. It's never shown to anyone else. You can kind of be a little bit more relaxed. If you have a giant leaderboards table with the profile picture of the person who is currently number one and they've got a really bad inappropriate picture as their profile picture, that's something that players aren't going to want to see, and they're gonna want to leave the game or get really angry because this has been allowed. Same with username. They don't want a username of the person who's winning with a really bad name. So just be careful with all of this when you're setting it up, and make sure that you've always got something in place to sort it out. Now with the username and password, again, it's just going to be add username password here. Again, this is a client call again, so this is more of like a setup one, whereas these are like update, whereas this one is like the initial one that you're going to want to call. This is probably the one that you're going to want to have when the first time they open the game, or the first time they go into the settings or something like that. And then in here you'll have email, password, and username, basically all three of these, and you'll set these up, and then once they've been set up, you'll be able to automatically use them in the game. It returns the username, so you can automatically hook up the username so the player knows that it's been successful and their name has changed, probably from their Steam ID, which is probably what a lot of people do, to the Playfab one. Then all you have to do is get the account info of the user. This is a little bit different because all of these you can just get normally. You can't just put in the title name and get the title name. In order to get all the account information, you're gonna have to do get account info of the user. Again, with this, you can pass through multiple things in order to find it. You can put in the email, but if the username's not specified, the Playfab username, but that's if the Playfab ID isn't specified. That one's probably more for if you're looking at someone else's account info rather than your own, because by default your Playfab ID is the Playfab ID is the one of the person who's making the call. But then once this has got it, you'll be able to hook this up. And in here you'll have account info, and then all you need to do then in order to find all the information about the player is simply do like the get field stuff. So get field and then title name. So title name, I think it is. And then with that you'll be able to get the information of the player. It's actually title info, sorry, because it requires you to get the title, like as in the game title, and then that is actually as an object, because obviously it's contained into the entire game rather than specifics. And then from here, this is where you do, get field, and then this one would be display name. That would be the username they've put in. You can do title player account again to go even further into it. So if we have a look at this on Playfab, title account will get all of this, and then obviously you can get the display name. You can even get the player ID if you specifically want to by doing title player account, then getting the field ID in order to get it that way. But basically, you can make sure that you get the avatar URL if you're setting the image anywhere. You can, get all the information of the player with the get account info, and then put it into your game to make sure that it's as relevant as possible. Obviously, again, with all of these, just be careful in case of any bad language or bad names or bad images put in. But on the most part, it's pretty simple just to, especially when setting the information, when you're telling the player to, update or set their information, it's pretty simple just to call all of these and simply get it set up. It's a little bit trickier to get the information, so this is probably used more when they're returning to the game. So when a player joins the game, have a look and see if there's any account info. If there is, hook up the display name, hook up the title ID, all that sort of stuff. But once you have this, you can start to get into more of a personalized thing with the player, so the player, can have their own username in the game rather than just their Steam ID name. And it also allows you to do more specific Playfab cross-platform stuff, which obviously, is becoming more and more popular with, say, PC and mobile having the game on too. This is the sort of thing that you'll need in order to do that. And I believe that is everything covered in today's episode. This one has been kind of a short one. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit busy at the moment in real life. I've got a funeral, unfortunately, so everything is a bit busy at the moment, as well as obviously my full-time work. So I've done a shorter video this time, just going over the basics of news, which is, as we showed, very simple to set up and read in game, but pretty powerful. Simply looked at the email and push notification systems. Again, they're more specifically for cross-platform or mobile specific. And then simply looked at the basics of setting up account info. Now, obviously, again, this is all user specific. So, you don't really want to... If you're going to go down this route of setting up a username and password, make sure you probably do set up the automatic email stuff for resetting passwords, because at the moment, if I was to set all of this up and I need someone then requested to change their password, there is currently no email address in place in order to do that. So then the admin, i.e. you, would have to do it manually. If you're going to go down the route of the multi-platform stuff like this with username, password and email, it's probably then also hand in hand with the email password recovery system and the account recovery system. So if you're going to do one, make sure you probably do the other at the same time. Make sure they're all working properly. And I think that brings us to the end of the video. Now, again, the plugin for the Steam microtransaction return callback should hopefully be up later in the week, and I'll be doing a little video on that, hopefully. It is working my end. There seems to be a little bit of trouble on I'm getting it onto the store. I'm getting it onto the marketplace. So that's something I'm discussing with Epic at the moment in order to get that done. But they're very quick about it. So hopefully it should all be nicely done by the end, by maximum the end of the week. I'm hoping to get it out like Wednesday or Thursday. So you know, keep an eye out on the channel. Hopefully there'll be a video on Wednesday or Thursday with that in it, with a link to the marketplace. It's going to be a free plugin, just for you guys to be able to download and just simply hook up the microtransaction stuff from Steam and ready to go. When in the video I'll show you the basics of it. I'll show you how it works, what the code is, and probably the first time ever we're going to be looking into code on here. Probably the only time we'll be going to be looking into C++ code on here. It's got a couple of examples in it, and we'll go over them during the video. But I made it specifically for people who just want to hook up the microtransaction stuff without paying 50-60 quid in order to get all Steam info, because some of the stuff on the Steam callbacks, people don't need it. People don't want to know when somebody changes the volume of Steam. People don't need that. But yeah, it's included in some of these massive packs for like 100 quid. But if you just want the Steam microtransaction callback, you kind of just want that, especially for when you're very early on. So it's something that I'm hoping to get out to you guys later in the week. And I'll catch you then. See you guys. Bye.